Her story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil right.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think's an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
You're listening to Riff Worship, the podcast that attempts to answer the age-old question, what makes a riff? Why do we care about riffs? Talking about records we love that feature riffs. Sometimes talking to people who make really good riffs, but not today. We're talking about just the first thing I said. With me, as always, we're really doing this intro.
Yeah, we did it.
With me, as always, are my good buddies, my best friends, Justin Swindle, Dylan Adams. Please take this away from me.
The whole show?
The whole show.
Take the show.
the whole show.
I don't want to edit anymore. I don't want to do any of the research.
I'm so goddamn tired.
I don't want to be here anymore.
What's up, fellers?
Doing dandy here on this lovely morning of whatever day this is. It has been it's kind of throwing everybody off that we're recording this early, I think.
Hey, they don't need to know that.
I'm taking the spotlight. I'm going to 2 shows this week. I'm going to see the Eye Flies and Pinko on one day, and Full of Hell and Nails. Is Nails who are there?
No, it's Full of Hell and Harm's Way.
Harm's Way. Yeah. Two big old shows.
I'm so jealous. I probably won't be able to go to. Well, I definitely won't be able to go to the Full of Hell Harm's Way one, because I think the closest stop will be the Milwaukee Metal Fest, and then I don't know. There's like a bunch of I don't think I'll be able to make it to the Eye Flies one either, which I'm pretty disappointed about because I love that record. I love that band.
There's a little bit of history of Bowling Green and Pinko because
yeah,
they were on that one show at Rockies, and the other band that was on tour with them started to play and got shut down immediately, like 2 songs in.
They were like, I don't even think I mean, good for them, but it was like, yeah, well, you guys are going to stop playing. The other band can play, right? But we're like, we're not going to, you just kick this other, we're not going to not.
They also shared the same gear.
Right.
Yeah, they were like, it's too loud. Well, this is the same amp, so we're not.
The bartender was like, this was louder. I've seen Sun. Like, I'm like, okay.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
Bullshit. I'll say this. Having played at that same bar and having a standard guitar amp, dual rectifier, half stack, and being told, like, you need to come down. I'm like, motherfucker, I can't even hear me and I'm in front of it. And having a very important, influential person in my life tell me, like, hey, man, you got the master volume right behind you.
It's weird how that place would, like, I mean, it was like concrete walls, right? So it'd be like, but I for it being like so loud on the other end of it, there were so many times we played there and I like could not fucking hear myself at all. But anyway.
What's not loud? The production on this record we're talking about today.
It's very quiet.
Not a perfect production. Not even a perfect record, I will say. But I do like it. I think there's a lot of great qualities to it. It's got a lot of, I'll say, potential. There's like a lot of weird shit going on that makes it really stand out to me. And a lot of great riffs.
Damn near too many.
There's a lot going on. But I do love this record. You know, I know it seems a little like, based on what I said, but I think for the time and place and maybe where things were going in extreme music, this is like an influential record to a lot of bands in this area and the people who heard this record. Ripping Corpse. We're going to be talking about Dreaming with the Dead from 1991, their debut and only record they ever put out. I would love to, I think it's probably pretty obvious based on our discussions before we did this. Swindle, you have never heard this record before.
Correct. That is true.
Dylan Adams, how are you? How are you familiar? When did you discover Ripping Corpse?
Through Hate Eternal. through the man himself, Mr. Rutan. I became privy to Ripping Corpse, just kind of learning where he came from, going back, listening to it. I'm sure I listened to this album in my late teens, the first go around. I probably downloaded it or found something lurking in early YouTube land, wherever it was. I definitely didn't own it, and even to this day, I don't own it. But I heard it and went, okay, I get it. I see what came from this, what became of it. And throughout the years, I've listened to it more. Obviously, Decibel had a really great Hall of Fame article on it. And then you learn more about like the Ripping Corpse days and the New Jersey days and some of the great bands. You know, we go back to one of the very early episodes of this podcast where we talked about the Human Remains comp. And Jersey has kind of this very weird, dissonant, atonal kind of sound to them. And there's a lot of that on this record. And it seems like a really formative album for a lot of people based in that area.
From the research that went into our doc, I would say that the band is probably happy that you don't own this record. And if you ever get the chance to own this record, they would probably rather you not buy it.
Yeah, a very tumultuous record contract, manager dealings, all of which we will get to. But to kind of further Dylan's point about New Jersey and the bands that came out of there. Yeah, my first kind of introduction to that would have been Human Remains EP, Using Sickness as a Hero, which we did do an episode on like way back. But through that and kind of doing research and like, Dave Whitty was always like the first to kind of say like Ripping Corpse was a huge inspiration to me. I went to a bunch of shows and pretty much learned my own kind of unique style and take on that through just watching their drummer and watching those sets all those years. So that was like how I I got to hear what that band is. And you definitely hear a lot of that same swing and the kind of groove and just the all around like weird tempo changes that both bands kind of share. But yeah, I would say that Human Remains was like the first thing I heard. And then kind of going back, I'm like, oh, this was the other local band that was like really big and important during that day. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a weird history. It's a short history, but it's a fun one. And like Dylan said, there's a really great Decibel Hall of Fame article on this record that I would highly suggest you go read. If you have the chance, a lot of the information that we have in this episode is based solely on that. So definitely check that out. But we kind of have to go back to like the mid to late 80s, going back to Long Branch, New Jersey, with a band called The Beast. And this was like a project that was like you're maybe like your more typical kind of speed metal, kind of more traditional sounding stuff. This project featured vocalist Scott Ruth in the band, and then later Shaune Kelley on guitar when the later incarnation of that band was the thing. I know they did like maybe a couple demos, one in particular for Megaforce, obviously being kind of located in that area as well. But I think it's important to note, like, you have all of these, like, 86 obviously being like a huge year for thrash metal. Arguably its peak with like Master and Puppets, and, Rain and Blood, and, 87 you had Among the Living, all that stuff. But you also have this other completely different area of the world that's like exploding with this similar type of music, this thrash metal, but they're doing it far more aggressively, far more like faster. It's just all around heavier.
We talk about those kind of German thrash bands, and you look at like the Sodoms, the Agent Oranges, the Kreators, which I think you and I are big fans of Kreator. But you look at that and it's arguable that it's like proto death metal. It's because of how aggressive and the speeds, and like they're not using what we now know as the blast beat today, but they're using that 1 foot kind of skank beat that's, just sped up that much faster, almost double timing it. And it's the very early way that the blast beat was played, just that 1 foot blast. And I think Ripping Corpse, in namesake alone, definitely took that as a huge influence and went, we have to just push the limits, right? I think that's the quote from Shaune, is like, I wanted to be the most extreme thing, or I wanted to just get more extreme. I kind of left the big four behind. Not that he didn't enjoy it, not that he didn't draw influence from those, but he left it behind and just wanted to get that much more extreme. And it seems like in particular, the band Kreator was a huge influence on this group of guys, or Shaune in particular.
Yeah, definitely correct in that. Shaune kind of mentions, like we often do growing up, you look for those album covers that just look fucking intense, and Pleasure to Kill from 1986, that's Kreator's sophomore record. It features like this weird kind of like monster creature on like a mountain of skulls, just like choking another thing. It's great. I've had the same experience with it, kind of digging through a lot of that thrash metal stuff. I saw that, I'm like, what the fuck is that cover? Need to hear this. And definitely intense. So kind of a similar thing. Yeah, Shaune mentions like Slayer being kind of the tipping point. Oh, this sounds like a little bit more evil, and kind of, all right, now I'm shifting gears into the German side of it. So yeah, they were like playing in the Beast and say like, let's do a cover band. We're going to make a Kreator cover band called Ripping Corpse. And, so that was going to be like the side project to the Beast. However, on New Year's Eve, 1986, they don't go into specifics with it, but there was apparently like this big blowout fight and the band breaks up. So then they kind of shift gears into doing Ripping Corpse, this cover band. And they meet Brandon Thomas, who was in a band called Dirge at the time. And he was also wanting to plan on doing some like German thrash covers. So apparently Brandon had known Shaune for years by this point. I think they played in a band called Dark Avenger previously as like teenagers. He got an offer to play in Dirge, and then Shaune got an offer to play in The Beast, where he met Scott. So that you kind of have this like, I know that guy, I used to play in this band with him, or like I used to go to those shows. So everybody kind of knows each other, it seems. And once the band breaks up, the trio kind of start jamming it together for a few months on these covers. And then they get Dave Bizzagatti. Sorry if I mispronounced that, Dave, but it was another guy. I don't think they knew him necessarily. I think it was like a friend of a friend. He played in a band called Black Dragon, which did like loudness covers.
Hey, hell yeah.
So there you go. And he was like, maybe they were asking around like, hey, do you know anybody who would be interested in playing stuff like this? And so they got connected with Dave. They ended up doing a few Slayer covers and never actually played any Kreator songs as far as I know. But once they started kind of dipping their toe in some of that stuff, they started writing original music.
To kind of go back to the breakup, it's New Year's Eve. I'm sure there was plenty of alcohol involved. My take on the breakup was that they're all hanging out. Someone puts on Born in the USA. Someone's like, this isn't Springsteen's best. It's obviously Nebraska. And just a huge brawl takes place over which album is best. Well, this has more hits. Well, this is straight from the hip. And just a fight going on over these two Springsteen records. And that's how I interpret the breakup actually happened. And thankful to Bruce Springsteen, Jersey's greatest son, to helping form Ripping Corpse.
Wow.
It's been a while. I'm glad you finally got a Bruce Springsteen nod into an episode.
I was thinking about that the other day. That like every Thou episode we did, there was at least something dropped in there.
Right. But I just think it's so fucking funny that they were trying to do a Kreator cover band like the same fucking year that this album came out. They were like not years after the band had broken up or whatever. It was like the year that this album came out. They were like, let's cover these songs that just came out.
Yeah. It is pretty wild. Like I can't imagine Kreator had been around for like not even 5 years at this point, probably.
Yeah. Right. What? Pleasure to Kill came out in 86, right?
Yeah. Right.
And then
so they were playing. Like the Beast broke up in 86. They had to have been jamming or had the idea of doing this cover band at the time of this release.
And I was looking it up. They only have one album before, and it came out in 85.
Yeah.
So Kreator had only ostensibly been around for a year,
which is crazy too. You got to think also. Important to note, like. You had to know where to find this shit too.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really a lot of people, as far as I know, listening to this band. You had to be in the know. You had to like have a record store available that was getting these imports from Germany. So like, hey, here's a really niche thing that I am a fan of. It just came out and maybe a very small group of people are really into it. we're starting a band playing a song.
10 people in the state of New Jersey were into Kreator at the time, and 4 of them were in the same band.
So it's kind of fucking wild, right? Because obviously Jersey is not terribly far from the New York State, New York City, that sort of thing. And you've got this great lineage of New York death metal bands stretching as far back as the Suffocation, Immolation, Incantation. Cannibal Corpse is from New York. And I kind of look back at my early listening years of getting into death metal and more extreme stuff and seeing Paul in like early interviews, Paul from Cannibal, in a Pleasure to Kill t-shirt and some early footage. So it's like, yeah, a lot of those guys, you just had to be in the know, and I'm sure were tape trading. Tape trading was obviously still going on at this point. So it was like Pleasure to Kill, someone probably had like a 6th generation copy of a copy of Pleasure to Kill. And no wonder they couldn't cover the songs, because you could probably barely hear the shit. And it's like, you look back at it and you realize that to access that style of music and to get that immediacy of hearing the new thing, you had to really be into it. You had to really fucking find it. You had to hunt it down. And just knowing that all of these guys somehow went on to be in these larger bands and do the whole touring thing. It's pretty fucking wild to imagine something could just happen. And all of this shit just moves the way it does and kind of like spider webs from there.
Yeah. Also on the topic of like New York, obviously this band's in New Jersey. They talk a lot about it in the Decibel article, where there really wasn't a scene for this type of music, or like really a metal scene. It seems like in general. They kind of mentioned bands like Explorer and other Symphonies of Steel, and then you had the Beast. So there's like a small community occurring. Life of Agony, they even mentioned by name as well. But it seems like one thing they often talk about in these days is like how divided the scenes were as well. Like long hair metal guys and the hardcore kids, they did not like each other, yet they're getting thrown on the same bills because these places probably don't know any better to do that. They talk about like, yeah, we would play like CBGBs with Madball and like a funk band or something like that, and it is what it is. But they did not like Ripping Corpse. They said that people would turn out to their shows, but there wasn't like a strong community where they were located. They said they didn't like us at all. Hardcore kids did not like long hairs back then. There were fights. If you could break through and make them slam dance in a couple of parts, then they were usually not too hard on us, but there was collision there. We would play with the Crumb Suckers, and they said some shit like, Satan's here tonight, and the crowd booed us off stage. With all that, you could essentially have like the first kind of initial lineup of this band, a 4-piece, Brandon Thomas, Shaune Kelley, Scott Ruth, and Dave, I'll just say Biz on bass.
There you
go. Forming in New Jersey in 1987. And they kind of played as a 4-piece for a while. Like they had a few demos. Death Warmed Over, that was the first demo. It was like 4 songs in 87. You also have the Splattered Remains demo in 1988. That's like 6 more songs, some of which would be featured on the album as well. But they kind of mentioned they didn't really get like they started to get a little bit more serious, or like they got a little bit more notice on the Glorious Depravity demo in 1990. That was their 3rd demo. They actually were able to record this in like a decent studio, from what I understand. They had management as well by the 3rd label, who I should mention, Gunter Ford, who I believe we've mentioned on a couple episodes before, because he was also Morbid Angel's manager as well. We'll definitely get in a little bit more into Gunter in a second. They mentioned the 2nd demo being kind of a shit show. They recorded it for like $140 on 1-inch tape. And the guy who recorded it was like a huge Christian. And he was like, get the fuck out of my studio. You guys are going to burn in hell. Like, I guess he finally like read the lyrics, and they had to like go back to the studio and pick up all of their stuff. But this was the one they kind of mentioned being like the tipping point. Like, okay, we were able to get a deal. And they recorded it with the intention of maybe getting some industry notice as well. This is also important to mention. This is the band's first release as a 5-piece. You finally get Erik Rutan on guitar, who at the time was like 17. He had known Brandon Thomas since he was like 8. He like didn't even play guitar until like his teens. But, you know, by the time those guys like started getting into music, I think Brandon started playing with Shaune, and he met Scott through those guys as well. But Shaune, I should say, was a huge influence on Erik, showing him like some of his first riffs. He mentioned like, yeah, he taught me how to play like Crazy Train and Black Magic, not so much like actual like theory, but he taught me how to play some of these riffs. And then I was kind of like off to the races as well. But yeah, so you kind of have Erik coming into the band. He had his own band at the time, but they would like kind of jam together and hang out. And then once Shaune felt that like Erik got up to par, he was like, yeah, this like our band would probably benefit from having a second guitar player, beef it up a little bit. Showed him like maybe like 14 or 15 songs that he had, and then that was pretty much it.
It's wild to know that, you know, a young Erik Rutan's being shown how to play all of these songs, and he's very early on, and it seems like he caught on really quickly with just guitar and just kind of took to it, especially this form of music. So when you're learning to play guitar and the first music you're learning is extreme metal, that does a lot to you when it comes to, you know, how technically proficient you're going to be. Because what we'll notice upon digging into this record a bit is that there's a lot of kind of Erik Rutan isms that are on here that he's taken on and done in every record he's ever done and recorded that started here. And it's great to find out that a lot of those are probably from Shaune. A lot of those subtle nuances and the way he plays and the style, it's all on there. And the fact that he's, you know, 19 by the time this album is recorded, or 18 or whatever it is, it's like, okay, we're off to the fucking races. Hey, my first record helped get me much further and helped me learn everything. And it's you know, it's safe to say that you and I have kind of followed Rutan from like the early years of what he's done and how much of an influence he is on extreme metal.
Yeah, it all starts here, and it seems like everything kind of happened super quickly for him, as far as like doing this record and you know, some of the stuff we'll talk about in a little while. But yeah, it can't be, you know, understated how important Shaune is to Erik's playing, but also just the band as a whole. Like everything kind of starts with him. He comes up with the riff, and like he'll bring it into the practice space, and they'll like rehearse for like 4 or 5 hours on something. Like they really were playing quite a bit, and I think it definitely shows. Like, you know, whether you like it or not, I feel like the band sounds very, very tight on this record. The way they're able to kind of like shift tempos on a dime, or some of the arrangements that they're putting together, and that really has to come from just the amount that they were playing and rehearsing at the time, for sure.
The output of this band is fucking crazy. Like not necessarily what they were able to release, because it is one record, but they said that Shaune was like making one song a week, and they had up to like 50 songs or something like that. Fucking crazy. Yeah,
which made it kind of difficult for them to figure out what they were actually going to put on the record itself, from what I understand. But yeah, they put out this demo, and it does get some, you know, notice from different labels. The first being Earache was very interested, and they said Digby actually came over and watched them play. However, there was like a British tax law that would have like, you know, made it kind of impossible for them to go forward. So they didn't end up going with Earache. They actually went with a Canadian label called Kraze Records, or like Maze America, I guess is their like American offshoot or whatever. But they worked with bands like Biohazard, which they kind of mentioned that was the kind of the deciding factor. Like, we know those guys. This is probably a good sign, right? Pile Driver, another Canadian band I'm familiar with, Exciter. You have Saga, and then Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush, a Canadian rock band, I guess. I don't know. So they went with this Canadian label. They didn't ultimately go with Earache because of that British tax law. So this was all orchestrated by Gunter, their manager. So again, a little bit of foreshadowing here. Maybe we'll get into it a little bit, but
it's funny when it comes to like the label decision they made, because in hindsight, now knowing kind of some of the stories behind Earache, and especially the early 90s, they would have been the better of the two evils here. even with that going on. At least you would have gotten like repressings.
It's kind of crazy when I'm like when we were doing the research and like reading that article, it was like, yeah, this like Canadian label signed us to a 5-record deal. Like, you know, we have these demos, but I don't know. It just seems like, yeah, no, this will be good. It'll be, like we went out to Long Island to sign the contract, which was supposed to be something like a 5-album deal with a live album. It says Brendan Thomas. I'm not even sure how Gunter got in touch with Kraze because they were a Canadian label, but it was a good deal and we didn't have any other suitors. They gave us a decent budget to record at a great studio, says Erik as well.
Do y'all think going up to Long Island was like the Warriors? They were just followed by gangs with baseball bats.
This is what we fought all night to get to.
Also, I bet people were really clamoring for that Biohazard and Frank Marino and the Mahogany Rush tour that was probably on the books. Yeah,
it's gonna happen. They in the sleeve. There's some ads for Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush. So the band, it's on the record. It says the album was produced by Ripping Corpse, but that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case according to Scott. It's funny. It says produced by Ripping Corpse because let me tell you something. We did not produce this record. Not because we didn't try, but because we didn't know what we were doing. We had no freaking clue, especially about recording in a big studio like that. It was cool and a lot of fun, and we had our opinions, but we were not producers, and I would not give us a production credit. But, you know, that seems to be kind of commonplace for a lot of bands. Stick their name on it. It was usually the engineer who pretty much kind of made everything go. So you have Bill Klatt, who helped engineer and mix the album at Quantum Sound Studios in Jersey City, New Jersey. There were actually 2 engineers here, but they were both pretty good. Bill Klatt was the owner, I think, and the other guy who worked on the board was Dave Ellenwood, according to Brandon Thomas. So yeah, this is like your first taste of being, you know, your new band, you're recording your debut record, and you're recording in a studio. And, you know, lo and behold, Erik said this was a pretty influential experience for him. That record led me to every other record I've ever done, and becoming a producer and owning my own studio. So again, obviously we know Erik for all of his output musically, but he's also recorded like most of the Cannibal Corpse records we love and a ton of other fucking bands as well.
Formative, I believe, is the word.
That's it.
Yes. Yep. Formative. Thank you. What did I say?
You said influential.
Yeah.
It is also influential, but formative is more accurate.
Well, speaking of formative, also in the studio at the same time, probably a huge influence on every member of this band is Sepultura recording their Arise album.
Yes. Yeah, they were like mixing it at the same time, right?
Yep. Speaking of like early borderline thrash, borderline death metal influence, I mean, you look at like Beneath the Remains and Arise, and those albums are kind of in that same proto-death realm, right? Like it's not fully a death metal band. It's not just old school thrash. It's a great blending of both. And I mean, Arise is a classic record at this point. So you're recording in the studio, and it also shows how small the scene was in general with like death metal and grind. Everyone kind of came in contact with each other at some point, you know, via Morris Sound or Scott Burns or the Earache guys or whoever it may be. Everyone kind of just came in contact. It was a very small, you know, it was smaller than we realize.
Do y'all think Sepultura James Taylored them? Sent the bodyguards over.
Big timed them.
Yeah. Max just pointing, going, get them.
You're right, though. I mean, especially on the Scott Burns thing. I mean, Scott Burns was like pretty much the only guy who like really knew how to capture a lot of that stuff. So, I mean, you know, not everybody's going to like drive down to Florida to record their record. So, I mean, you essentially kind of opt to record here. And I'm sure Bill had more of I'm sure he'd recorded rock bands before, but I doubt he'd probably recorded many metal bands. And, you know, for even that, they basically recorded this thing, did the whole thing in 2 to 3 weeks. They said we kind of winged through that thing, mixed it, and that was that. I remember Shaune and I working on the guitar tone and Bill being more of a rock purist guy. They were really like very particular about their guitar tone, is what they kind of mentioned in here. But yeah, that's essentially it. You record with a guy who probably never recorded a metal band before, do it in 2 to 3 weeks, and then you're on your way.
coming from that Jane Doe album, sometimes that works out the best.
This is true. Yeah. You just make sure that you know how to capture a good guitar tone, know where to place the mics decently enough, and then hope for the best.
Is that a good take, guys? Is that good?
I don't know.
You tell me. But it seemed like Erik, one of them, I think it was Erik, was not, when they like heard the CD, the final form of the CD, he wasn't as he was let down a little more than he thought he might be.
Yeah, wasn't a Alan Douches kind of situation.
Funny enough, that's who Erik works with for all of his mixing and mastering on every record he does is Alan.
Perfect.
One day we'll get him on this show.
I would love that.
Both
West
of them.
Side, baby. So another important thing to note about this record is the artwork. Again, it definitely catches your eye. It reminds me of Kreator records that I have seen in the past for sure. Maybe another maybe a first taste of what was to come with the label. Apparently the artwork for the album was like very it was tame, or tamer than what they had initially envisioned. There was supposed to be a pile of hearts draining blood into pools beneath them, and the skeletons in the back were supposed to be corpses with holes in their chests where their hearts were ripped out, said Scott Ruth. I remember Scott saying it was supposed to be gorier, but I don't recall what happened. What I do know is that our original logo wasn't on there, and the album had that Yngwie Malmsteen font logo, says Erik.
The minute I saw this cover art years ago, I already knew what it was. Like I get it. It's basically a scene from A Hellbound Heart, which is Clive Barker's novel that introduces the Cenobites and Hellraiser and all this, right? Like I saw that and went, yeah, this absolutely looks like a scene out of that. But it's definitely a depiction of that. I mean, there's a track on here that we've joked off air that is absolutely influenced by probably those first two Hellraiser films for sure. But yeah, I immediately saw it. I went, oh yeah, this is another like Cenobite thing going on. And it would be interesting to see why the label stepped in.
But you're absolutely right, and it's confirmed by Shaune that there was definitely a Lovecraft Hellraiser influence on the record. Rob Leacock, who had done like the artwork for their previous demos, he also did demo artwork for Human Remains as well. And I guess Scott still has the artwork. It's like a 5 inches by 5 inches like painting. So pretty cool. I would have loved to have seen like what their original vision of the album artwork would be, but it definitely catches your eye, and it is definitely like part of the reason like I wanted to check it out for sure. It was just like what is this shit? Like this looks crazy. Well, we've talked about the artwork, we've talked about the history. Shall we get into the tracks?
Sure.
Sweetness, the song about Walter Payton.
Oh, I thought it was the Jimmy Eat World single.
I think this is like it's the first song of the record. It's a strong opener. It feels like a signature track for me. Every time I think of this band, I think of the opening fucking yell. Sweetness. This band, like right out of the gate, they have a lot of riffs. They have a lot of groove. I think this band has like a very unique swing to them, and they're able to kind of transition from kind of arrangement to arrangement on a dime. Like you get these fast, like blasting parts, and then you have like almost like hardcore kind of slamming. Like they really do have like a great sensibility of just how songs are supposed to flow at certain points. But there is a lot. I will say there is a lot of stuff going on.
It's a band that definitely came out in the early 90s, right? Very early death metal. And a lot of those early death metal records you can hear. Obviously, this band's really only had one album. So you hear all those influences. You hear the melding of them. You hear things that sound similar to, say, Death. You hear things that sound similar to Atheist, which I hear on this track at different occurrences. The groove that this band has and the kind of swing, that's like old school Death. That's the first 3 Death records on there. You've got these great kind of dissonant harmonies going on throughout the track. layers upon layers of guitars at the beginning of it that, due to the production, you really have to hone in to hear it. Like, there's some really high guitar, like high harmonies that are so buried in the mix that if you don't just I think you're almost just catching the pick attack of them at certain points. And, you know, you've got these kind of like death grind-esque kind of verse structures, which is very akin to those early Kreator, early Destruction, early Sodom records, right? That kind of just 1 foot blast, just going 600 miles a minute. And it's all on here. I mean, this is a really good representation of a blending of all of those styles into one. And this would be a great record to hand to anybody, just based off this track alone, to go, hey, here's kind of what death metal sounded like at the beginning of it. Here's a blending of all of it.
I love the well, in the first part, that's like super fucking fast. All of the like 1 second or 2 second guitar run solos that are like, it happens like 5 times just in that first verse. And then like there's a part near the end where like in the middle of the riff, they like turn the drums around, like the riff and the drums both like turn around to throw off the kind of the feel of the riff, and also backwards drums.
Yes.
They just like dead stop the song and there are backwards drums in the song.
It's great. It's like they got that reverse drum part, and then it's like I would say like a death kind of melodic harmony thing going on to like really close out the song. I like the vocals on this. I like Scott's vocals. Some of his like cadence choices like don't always do it for me. They kind of remind me, it's like almost like at parts it sounds like Obituary, and then at times it almost kind of reminds me of like Kurt from DRI. Like it definitely kind of has this like thrash kind of inspired flow to it. I love, in other tracks I'm sure we'll get to, there's some like really crazy like vocal layering shit that happens that I am in fucking love with. But as far as the song Sweetness, I think it's like a really great, strong opener. It's one of my favorite tracks on the record.
It's definitely the most subtly titled track on the record, for sure.
Yeah, a little bit more on the nose with the title track, Dreaming with the Dead, I guess. We get right the fuck into it. It just kind of goes blasting like a mile a minute. And like, again, they love a guitar break. They love a like, all right, we're going into the next part of the song. Like, bam, like, all right, here's the soloed out guitar. Now we're going here, and now we're going this way. Like they do it a lot.
That's early songwriting. That's learning how to write songs, right? You don't know how to transition to the next part. Just come up with something real quick, go to the next part. And that's what I noticed, especially on like we'll say the A side of this record, right? Is the song structures in particular have no structure. Like there's nothing there. Riffs are played one time. Sometimes there's a part you hear for 4 seconds and it's gone. And it's not even purely like one of those things I think was intentional. It's just showing this is how we learn to write, because I feel this album is very much here's a group of guys learning to play this style of music and just wanting to go push the limits, right? Let's see what we can do. This is what extreme means to us, because there's riffs I would have loved to have come back to and heard again and you never hear again. It's a transition at that point. They're like, they put effort into writing a 4-second transition that is this really quick riff. And on this track in particular, I mean, as you said, you open it up, it's got this swirling kind of chaotic thing going on. I mean, there's like Entombed kind of style riffs going on in here, these doomy aspects to it. This band is king on those verse parts, being that kind of tectonic thrash influence there. And it's fucking craziness, like just pure, it's dissonant without being dissonant all the time, even though that's plentiful on this album. It just sounds like chaos in a 1 minute and 45 seconds, 1.5 minutes long song.
This is the first time on the album that pinch harmonic alternate tremolo picking thing happens, and then it lasts for the rest of the album after this. I took a note on Glorious Depravity. I don't think so there's a guitar break in this song. I think in Glorious Depravity, there's like a guitar break and they play the same riff, but they don't play it the exact same way. It's like a much faster version of the same riff. But I think on the next song, Anti-God, they like have a guitar break where they play a riff, and then immediately after the guitar break, they just play a completely different riff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, there are definitely parts on this record where like there's a guitar break and it just here's like a part that like, oh, this is like completely like different to what we heard. Like,
Yep.
I guess it's in the same key, but it's like we just changed the feel of this song completely. What I will say though about the guitar playing and like kind of the writing of this record, yes, it does feel like very like early and like they're getting to know each other and like kind of structured these songs. And that's why I'm like, what comes next would have been like so cool to hear, and we'll get to that. But I do want to give them credit because I feel like when I listen to the record, you know, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of layering. So they definitely like sat there with these parts as well. And like, they're never quite playing the same thing. Like there was somebody at least like holding the foundation, but then there might be like, Erik might be doing like a, you know, melodic part, or maybe it's Shaune, and they complement each other very, very well. I will say that, you know, for it being like early in this band and, you know, again, what could have came next, I do feel like there was at least a lot of thought put into like how the guitars are like communicating with one another.
The next song is Anti-God.
How about them double kick? That double kick intro is something. I like it.
Painkiller.
Yeah.
Yeah. Painkiller intro. Yeah. It's, you get a double kick exercise right out the gate, and then you go right into this like great death metal groove that this band does a lot. This band does a lot of groove, and I would be interested to find out what influence that groove came from, because at different points on the record, it sounds like different bands. There's kind of a New York style groove that you get on a lot of them. There's this Florida groove you get from it. I definitely hear like early Suffocation from this record a lot. Immolation on this track in particular. That riff that's at like 40 seconds in, 41 seconds in, it just sounds like Immolation to me, which is a great early New York death metal band. You know, it's just a really wild fucking track that you got here.
There are songs on this album with full solos, but there are way more songs on this album with very fucking short solos.
Yeah, I think this is the one that does have a solo on it. Mm-hmm. Like could be considered a complete solo, whereas the other time it might be like a quick scale run, or like here's a little, like almost like a tray for Morbid Angel type of thing. Like, hey, here's a little texture for you, and then we're just gonna fucking move on. Like,
right.
I do find it kind of funny where, you know, they always talk about the clashing between like the hardcore world and, you know, like, you know, metal and whatever, but like that opening riff, it definitely kind of sounds like a two-step part to me a little bit, and there are definitely some fucking heavy breakdowns on here. So like I feel like while there was some clashing, there's definitely stuff that like hardcore kids would have loved to like come across like in some of the songs on this record.
At least much later in the hardcore world.
Sure.
I think at this point you still didn't have the I think the Carnivore records were starting to release around the time this band was formed. You still didn't quite have that like melding at this point. I think that came kind of in the early 90s. And it is funny to look back on it now and see what kind of modern hardcore looks like in today's standards, whereas it is a lot of like early 90s influenced metal riffs, right?
Yeah.
Like mosh parts, that sort of thing, like Bolt Thrower, Obituary. This band would fit right in with some of like the groove and nuance that they've got. I mean, God, hardcore kids are jockeying Dying Fetus and have been for years, and that's like borderline slam death. I mean, not to mention the Cricket band, Torture. You know, hardcore kids love that band, and it's like, yeah, it's just a lot of like a wild kind of groovy shit.
Hi, Hunter. I doubt you're listening.
Not my fucking hardcore. Not my fucking hardcore. God damn it.
Calm down, old man.
Keep the chocolate out of my peanut butter. Keep it out. Get it away.
Glorious Depravity.
Depravity.
Depravity. This has one of my favorite riffs on the fucking record on it. That like grooving kind of guitar harmony riff at the beginning of the song is like, God, I love it so much. I wish it was around longer.
Sounds like Cannibal. Sounds like early Cannibal Corpse to me. When I heard that, it almost sounds like, kind of sounds like Skull Full of Maggots a little bit to me. It like just right out the bit. This is probably the first track that I heard Suffocation on towards the back end of the song. Actually, sorry, towards really the back end of the song because the track's only 2 minutes long. 50 some odd seconds in just sounds like pure Suffocation to me. Something off of like Effigy of the Forgotten or even Human Waste, the first EP the band released.
This does sound like a skull full of maggots. I agree.
One of my I fucking love. There's the they've been very much like doing the kind of transitions based on like an instrumental break, but this is like maybe one of the first moments you get like the shriekier vocal doing it, and it was so fucking cool. Where it's just like, I'm gonna scream, and then we're going to the next fucking thing. And it was like everything else cuts out. This band, I think songs like this band just like shows like how weird and fun they can be. Like these songs must have been like so much fun to play and write. Just, maybe I think they mentioned like the Dog House or like there's some rehearsal studio in Ashbury Park where they were like doing I thought it was a hot dog place. I don't know if it is. I saw some pictures of it. I could be wrong, but then they're doing like gang vocal parts in the song. Like it just seems like a really fun track. I love that main riff I was talking about. You also maybe hear the bass for the first time in moments in this track. I was listening on these headphones, and there's moments where it's maybe a little bit more reserved, where Biz is able to cut through a little bit more.
You just hear the strings hitting the fucking pickups.
Honestly, that's probably it.
That's it. Just a couple click clacks here and there. And it's like, oh yeah, he stands out really well. You hear that? It's like seeing somebody get dressed for the first time, like going to being in a corporate job, and they're like, oh look, he did so well. And the tie's off, and like one sleeve is longer than the other, one sock's different. It's like, he's there. We have a bass player. He's there, which is kind of common fodder for a lot of death metal in general.
Sure.
Maybe not so much now, but specifically during this period.
Yeah. I mean, he's like playing along with, the guitar, it seems, and you just kind of get lost in the mix of it all. That for it being like maybe a little bit of a quieter record. I mean, it's pretty distorted, and that the tone is, it's gonna get rid of that low end a little bit for
sure. That world eating guitar sound. It does I call it the Injustice for All kind of thing, where you can hear the speakers like woof a little bit when on the palm mute. Just that kind of, that's the only way to call it. It's like this weird bassy kind of woof when the palm mutes are so dug in and they're so layered that you just can feel the speakers move. And it just eats everything. I would be interested to find out what amps were used on here. I know Erik is very fond of the JCM 800s. I would probably assume that he had something along those lines for this record.
Beyond Humanity. Fast as fuck. There's a lot of alternate picking. There's like, again, some of those like really quick shredding like scale runs throughout the song. This is definitely very German inspired to me, very Kreator. It is what it is. Like it's right there.
Yeah. That opening riff, that dissonant string skipping riff, I've heard that in every Hate Eternal record I've ever listened to. I've heard that in Erik's Cannibal stuff he's done years later. I have seen him do that type of playing. Like that is if it's not a Erik riff, it's a Shaune riff, and that's where it came from. But to hear that style of string skipping stuff going on, that intense speed, it's fucking dizzying, the amount, how fast some of this shit is and how it is playing. And I think you only get that from kind of self-taught self-taught playing, learning to play on the fly, learning to play music like this to where nothing is like foreign. You know, there doesn't have to be a technique to it. You just fucking go for it and do it. I mean, there's also like these great grooves on this track, borderline mosh riffs on this track. There's some harmonic minor harmonies towards the end that brings back like the Hate Eternal stuff, the Morbid Angel stuff, Nile, even for that fact, which came much later. And then you've got these, it's great. This is a cool track. And I think this is one of the more firmly realized tracks on the album to me. This is where you feel like a little bit more confidence. Maybe some of the stuff before this, which is very like throwing everything at the wall and it's sticking. This track feels like there's fundamental to it, and there is actually kind of a beginning, middle, and end to it.
There's a very fucking long instrumental break in this song.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like pretty mid-paced throughout like a lot of the instrumental break, or like the entire instrumental break is mid-paced. And then for some reason, just like 40 seconds left in the song, they were like, actually, let's go fast again. And then even after they bring the fast riff back, they bring the open riff back at the very end of the song, just with like 10 or 15 seconds left. They were like,
They do that a lot.
Yes.
They do that. There maybe to my ear, I would end some of these songs very differently, where I'm like, here feels like the natural conclusion of this song. Go fuck yourself. Nope. We're playing for we're back into the shit. We're like, for the whatever fraction of time we have left, it's gonna be just furious blasting speed.
I have literally heard them on this album have a fade, like it'll stop and there's 3 seconds left and they're like, boom, got to do something.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like watching a cat play with a toy. They fucking go at it and there's a pause, and then they go at it again and then there's a pause, and then they just launch themselves across the room. Yes.
Yeah.
This band had a hard time with being still.
Yes. Well, and I'll just use this as a transition to go into Feeling Pleasure Through Pain, because I literally wrote, because I remember sitting there and I think it had already been established, maybe like some of the structures of the album, what they were going to be. And I got to the end of that song. I was like, don't you fucking do it. Don't you do it. I know you're going to do it. And then of course, bam, we were like, we can't, it was the natural conclusion of the song and they just got to go. But I do love this song. I think there's like some really great, again, grooves with this track. There's like a really great, like descending kind of more chromatic style riff in this as well. I love the almost Carcass-like vocal. I mean, in a way, more like, hey, here's the guttural part and here's like the higher, shriekier part. But I do like this track, even though they just couldn't end it.
This might be my favorite track on the album, if not one of them. The ending riff of this song, when I first heard it, had me going through and like, how can I figure this out? Because there's so many hammer-ons and pull-offs in that whole lick, and it's in like 6, and it's layered in such a way that it sounds chaotic, which I liked. This is cool. This is a really fucking cool track. You know, there's the kind of huge octave thing that it does in it as well, which is I'm a big fan of. To me, that's the Morbid Angel. That's a lot of bands that do the whole like Lovecraftian thing use those a lot. You would probably hear it now in bands like Ochira as well. But that's where a lot of that comes into it for me. You got some more like groove on here. You got more of the German thrash thing. This is like a great culmination of everything that's on the record. And I think Swindle has a really good joke on this track.
Well, there isn't a joke. I saw the title of the song, Feeling Pleasure Through Pain, and when you said it, I was going to be like, oh, it's a Hellraiser song. And then I looked at the lyrics, and he literally yells Hellraiser in the lyrics. And not only that, it's so dead on that one of the lyrics is literally, quote, Frank is coming home. Like, this literally is about Hellraiser, and
We have such sights to show you.
I really like the open riff. There's a big old metal pause in the song, and I really liked the riff after the guitar solo.
Speaking of great riffs, Through the Skin to the Soul, I think this fucking opening riff is hard as shit. It's so good. I love that it's got like, it starts with that kind of cymbal kind of count in, and then it like this stank fucking face groove that this riff has. So cool. And then like it really gets kicked off with like, they do this like it's almost like a fade in like kind of vocal effect. It just kind of whooshes over, and then we're kind of thrown into the song.
There's like a single note riff, and when I say that, I mean not like the riff is one note, but like not chords, just notes.
Yeah.
That I like really fucking like in this song. It's very chaotic.
It's very weird and like off kilter, and maybe I would feel like a band like Human Remains. Like there's definitely parts on this record where I'm like, okay, I see where maybe they would have been inspired here, or parts like this where it's kind of it's really disorienting and parts, but it fits. It's kind of falling down gracefully, I guess, is like how I would explain it.
It's that nauseating sounding riff that's in the middle, and it is the single note when you're talking about, because they bring it back later and it's got a little bit different of a feel to it, but it's the very same riff, and the harmonies make it sound almost like almost stomach churning a little bit. It's very uneasy sounding, and again, like to what Austin said, it's you can definitely get the vibe that the band wanted to make people feel uncomfortable a little bit. And that's kind of what early death metal is. It wasn't meant to be even to what I think it is now, which is still a very extreme form of music. There are really great bands doing it, but there is a faction of death metal bands that almost seem a little safe now with it very highly polished production, all sorts of stuff. And those aren't bad things. It's just a bald idiot's opinion on what it is. But you get these great kind of just stomach churning parts of the song. 2 minutes, that the 2 minute mark is really wild to me. You get this, like, to me, it's a Rutanism during that period of the track, and then you actually get a fade out on the fucking song.
Yeah.
Like a very traditional fade out, like, and it's not a subtle one where it just tapers off. It gets to a middle point, then it just goes boop, and it's gone.
I heard that too. I'm like, oh, we kind of we ended differently, but it's also kind of weird. We just, somebody just knocked down the fade.
It's less of a fade out and less of a fade off and more of a fall out.
Yeah. Another one of my favorite tracks on the record, Rift of Hate. I think the riff is great. I love the drums kind of singled out with like the ride in this track. But that it's really like such a headbanger, like of a riff when we get into it, the main part of it. We play with a lot of tempo changes in the song. There is a shift to a really slow chug that just sounds fucking massive.
That is pure suffocation. The minute I was driving a couple days ago and I heard that and I went, oh yeah, where's Frank Mullen when you need him? It's like those fucking like vocals would have fit all over that. But you've also, on top of that, have those big octaves layered on top of it. So it's like, how we've already got this really heavy thing. What can we do to just push it over the edge? Let's add these big low octaves to it, because when it comes to death metal, I think that's a very synonymous thing, are those lower range octaves that you'll use a lot. And the lower you tune, the more crazy they get. But to stack those two things on top of each other, just complete bonkers. Completely bonkers. Like, it's freakazoid shit. I'm going to continue naming early 90s cartoons by doing that. I got on a whim there for a second.
They're really Animaniacs.
Yeah, this is like a very Bobby's World part, dude.
This is a very Ren and Stimpy-esque close-up situation.
I love that slow down, breakdown part. I also love every other time through the riff, like at the end of it, when they're going back to wrap around, I don't know if it's bass, but there is something at the end of the riff that like every other time they play through it, it just is a small little change. They like add a couple notes in before they turn back around and do it again.
Yeah. Also in that particular part, the slowdown kind of breakdown part, the vocal layering sells it even more. Like I love when they have like those layered vocals in. It works very perfectly. It's not like on the entire record, but in the moments it is, I cherish them.
What have you called them in the past? Bear and snake vocals?
Bear and snake vocals. They do them. They do them on this one. Yeah, it's a good song. They bring back that slow chug at least one more time in this, and then we're kind of on to the next one. Deeper Demons.
I had no idea what this song was about. I just thought it was a cool sounding song, and seeing in the research what it's about, I'll let you take that before I even get into like the descriptors of the song.
Y'all talk about Deeper Demons like 4 times a week in our group chat, right? Is that
listen? That's a different type of demon.
Oh, okay. I'm slow.
I like the hammer-on riff in this song. It's fucking crazy. It's very chaotic. And I also love in almost every time I hear it, intermittent blasting, where it's like a beat and they'll just blast for like 2 seconds and then go back to the beat, and then they just like bring that couple seconds of blasting in every now and then.
These guys seem very chaotic people in general. Like I remember they were talking about stories of like Erik being just like a madman, like even outside of playing, like riding like a scooter or a little bike down like the middle of lanes of traffic. Like these seem like maybe they were notorious for being just like wild, like can't sit still kind of guys, as Dylan mentioned. But you definitely get like that with all these bursts of speed at like any given time.
Yeah. The opening riff makes me immediately go to Altars of Madness. Very, very bouncy, the whole nine, like that. It's just there, that Trey Pete Sandoval kind of thing. Then you get what Swindle hit it, but I kind of called it the New Jersey riff that starts at 16 seconds in, that kind of dissonant thing they're doing. Like, it sounds like Human Remains. It sounds like Burnt by the Sun. Sounds like all of these great kind of New Jersey based, crazy sounding bands.
I love that they made it the riff, because I was worried that we were just going to move on. I wouldn't hear it, but I'm glad they made that like weird melodic scale run like the focal point of the song.
Yeah.
So I would have been really upset if I'm like, oh man, come on, dude, that riff fucking rules. And they kept it.
They used that very well, and I don't know why I didn't catch on this earlier, but a lot of the record has a very Terrorizer kind of feel to it as well, with just that crazy over the edge grind thing going on. Because let's face it, early death metal is influenced by grind. Like a lot of this revolves around the early grind bands like Napalm Death, Terrorizer being the American counterpart, Repulsion from Michigan. And I know there's many other bands from the UK that I'm forgetting, but Napalm is kind of the one that always sticks with me. But there's a lot of that, and they're just these great dissonant riffs all over this track as well.
Do you want to talk about what that song is about?
Well, allegedly, this song is about a pornographic actress named Shauna Grant and their life and their way they went out. I just thought it was a heavy fucking song. Like I've been listening to death metal for almost, God, I don't want to say it, but almost 25 years. And I don't know what the hell they're saying half the time until I take a look at it or something catches me off guard. And it's like, oh, now I have to know what this is about.
Yeah, there was Shauna Grant or her real name, Colleen Applegate. And yeah, I think I saw that listed somewhere, maybe in the Decibel article, or maybe it was on Metal Archives. But yeah, pretty sad. I think there's some references to other like there's the last song in particular has like real life references to it as well. But moving ahead, we have Sickness of Will. You get a lot of the same kind of, things this band is known for sure. But my favorite part really on the track that stuck out to me was like the call and response vocals that Scott is doing with, he'll say something and then there's like the gang of like more shrieking kind of raspy vocals. But my favorite part in the entire track is the fucking slow, dirgy fucking breakdown in this thing, to the point where it's like, one, they shift into it effortlessly, and then it's slowed down, and then someone's like, that's not fucking slow enough. Slow it down even more, dipshit. Like, it was awesome.
And they also do the fucking bass drop, the like slide down the neck before it gets like super duper fucking slow.
The opening riff, that aggressive gallop riff. It's not triplets, because we get that later. We get that on one of the last tracks of the album. This is a pure like kind of just that reverse gallop thing that like Rain and Blood does as well. It's that slow kind of Blessed Are the Sick mid-era Nile kind of thing that's going on. And again, the tempo just slowly drops further and further to add impact to it. And it's the most memorable part of the song to me. I do like the fact that they do bring the intro riff back again, which they're not very prone to do on most of the album.
I don't remember which riff it was in the song, but there's one riff in one of the faster parts that like just naturally, by the way the riff was written, like at the end of the riff, at the end of like the 4 bars or whatever, there's like a bit of silence. So at the end of every riff, it's almost like a natural pause. Like the guitar just drops out for a second before they turn the riff around. It's like a mini metal pause every time they go through the riff.
Good song. I like it a lot. And, you know, like you mentioned, there's definitely shifts in tempo, and pretty much no different than what we get on Chugging Pus. What a name.
Point proven. I'll say this. When I was doing my final listen for the album, and I knew the track was there, I knew the title was there, but when I saw the title just pop up, I couldn't help myself. I had to pause and just laugh for a few minutes, because it's as early death metal as you can get. Gross shit, zombies, horror films, you name it. Like it's just, what can we do to talk about the grossest shit possible?
Absolutely. I mean, the riff is great. Like kind of opens up with this octave kind of groove thing. And it goes, I love that you kind of listen to it. It goes back and forth, right? It's not played exactly the same. Like the first run through, I feel like it's more kind of downstroked kind of riffing. And then there's like parts where it'll change like to this like kind of triplet kind of chug thing. It's just slightly different. It's the same riff, but they do a little bit of alterations here and there. But it's a great song. There are so many different parts to this fucking song as well. It's like a fucking roller coaster going through it. Like there will be parts, there's like this kind of descending like lick line that they do 2 seconds, and then it's fucking gone. You're never going to hear it again.
Obviously the sludgy riff at the end of the track is the big one, and that's the only one on the song that I could actually call sludgy, because of just how it's paced, how the notes are play, or how the notes meet the hand, that sort of thing. That's the only part on the record where I actually went, oh, the bass is actually there, because the gaps in between all the notes. I mean, yeah, you can hear like little things here and there throughout the record where the bass is slightly there, but this is the first time you can audibly actually hear it.
I like the very opening riff, and there also is a really short riff that's like 3 notes or something that just gets played like a million times in the middle of the song, just by the virtue of like the riff is only 3 notes. So they're like, let's just keep hitting these 3 notes.
Seduction of the Innocent. We get to the final track. This shit starts off with a crazy fucking like pull off riff that it's completely different from anything else on the record.
It's a nightmare. It's so fucking overwhelming. There are so many layers doing so many different fucking things, and I was just like, I don't know if I can finish this record.
It's the mix of this is like louder than any of the other lead tones on the record, so it's like right up front, and it persists through the rest of the song too, so it's like up front. Yeah, I mean, it's like a swarm, like a bumblebee of like all of these fucking like little lead lines. but I do want to say like the drums are fucking going absolute ham
Drum
all
solo.
over the drum solo, which I do love, but it definitely feels like, okay, we need to transition this to another part.
Yep.
What are we going to do? All right, drum solo is here. We're going to be put here. One other thing I wanted to mention before we like get into the music of this, kind of like Deeper Demons, this does like have like a real, it's Seduction of the Innocent is actually the name of a book by psychiatrist Frederick Wortham. The song denounces Frederick Wortham, I guess, because he was kind of like, he denounced like comic books as like actual literature. I think they call him righteous slime, but I believe this is essentially like one of the people that put it's like the Comics Code Authority into play in the United States. So this band loves comic books, hates censoring comic books, I guess.
Part of the song is about the mayor of DC, Barry. I didn't look up anything about this song, and then I heard like couldn't tell what most of the songs were saying in this album, but I was like, I'm pretty sure this dude just said something about smoking crack. So I like looked up the lyrics, and it is like about that. It was like the guy was saying like, you can just like smoke crack and be the mayor or something like that.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I heard it too. And I went, why? Wait a minute. Where else have I heard something like that? There's a Good Charlotte song called Lifetimes of the Rich and Famous.
Yeah.
That mentions the very same topic.
Wow.
And it's like weird.
Bridging the gap.
Bridging the gap. I think this is the most interesting track on the record. I think it just hands down with the structure and everything that's going on in it. There's a actual hardcore part in the middle, like old school, like hardcore in there. The drum solo thing that's kind of there. And then you actually have this gnarly triplet riff at the back end of it. That is actual triplets being played repeatedly for a long period of time. And that takes so much stamina and endurance to do that shit, especially when it's this fast.
We also get like a proper fade out.
Yep.
On the track.
The echo of the vocals, but it's still like the music does not seem like it's at an end of the album. Musically, it kind of just ends the same way it just starts. But they do like kind of fade out and echo the vocals going out of the album.
I do want to say this though. We talked about the wild, like disorienting opening riff. It is that motif is brought back again. There's something very classical about that riff in particular. And I really took note of it on the back portion of the song when they brought the lick back. It just sounded, I don't know. There was something about it that had a very classical music kind of vibe to it that really hit me at that back portion.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean it's a nice varied track. It, like you said, it's different from a lot of what you hear on the record. They're trying some things, and I want to say, like, you know, it's 34 minutes long. We come to the close here. There was supposed to be another track on this record, Exhumation Day, was recorded during this session, but it wasn't on the album due to the label thinking it was too vile. The Hellraiser track, Feeling Pleasure Through Pain, I believe even had a title. It was like Sadomasochists from Beyond the Grave.
Yep.
And they didn't make them get rid of it. They just had them change the title of the track. So they're like, here's an egregious song. You can keep that one. This other one, fucking no. So yeah, it's just like another time where the label like fucking intervenes, and you can't have the artwork you want. You can't have the songs you want, I guess.
Also, wasn't I feel like I saw it in the notes that Exhumation Day was from one of the demos, wasn't it?
Yeah. So they'd had
so
it.
It was a song that already existed.
Right. It's like we've signed you, but we're not going. We signed a band called Ripping Corpse.
Right.
But we're not going to do our due diligence, and like we signed you to a 5 contract deal, but like, yeah, I don't know. Like, what did you think was going to be the thing?
I liked Scott's take of changing the title to Finding Pleasure Through Pain, but him just being like, yeah, you know, if Clive Barker had reached out to us and said, hey, don't title the song that way, it would have been much better than just assuming that we were going to get sued. At least then it'd been like, oh yeah, I would have changed it. Wouldn't have been a big deal. But just telling me I couldn't do something before something happened is, yeah.
So the record comes out. They didn't do a true tour of the record. They said they did little stints with Entombed up and down the East Coast. We played with Morbid Angel a few times. We kept busy, but no official tour. We were offered a tour of Europe with Sadus, but we couldn't negotiate a deal with them. Something about tour support didn't get ironed out in time, says Scott Ruth. But yeah, so they essentially did some mini tours, nothing like too extensive, just because they really couldn't iron out some of the deals, or, you know, they would have maybe done a little bit more had they gotten to go to Europe. But the quote really of the episode has to come through Erik Rutan. None of us ever thought for a second that Dreaming with the Dead would be our only album. Some of the stuff we wrote after Dreaming with the Dead was really advanced. A lot of the stuff from the demos and after that was so killer, it needed and deserved to be on the first album. I wish some of our stuff we wrote together after the demos made it onto future records, but history is history. So basically, Kraze, Maze, the record label that they signed to, they filed for bankruptcy. Apparently, they put out a record by Mick Taylor, the solo record, and it bombed. They had like apparently 30,000 copies of this record, and it only sold 3,000. This is a quote from Scott Ruth. They were also putting most of their funds into Biohazard. It seems like they really didn't know how to manage themselves, so the company went bankrupt. And you could tell, I think they noticed that like a lot of their the marketing was funneling into Biohazard and not so much the band. And so Biz, he kind of mentions that like, okay, clearly the label isn't in our best interest, and our manager Gunter isn't looking out for us either. And you know, there's like definitely some stuff we'll get into about the record itself, but you know, Erik Rutan mentions like he was working at a gas station. He was pumping gas for like $5 an hour. And he's 19 years old. We just signed a deal. It's like a 5-record deal. We're going to be going on tour. I'm going to quit my job and this is going to be it. And then like 6 months later, they don't even have a label anymore. It's fucking bankrupt. So whatever was going on behind the scenes, they definitely weren't talking about. They just kind of like, well, that's it. We're done. So get back out there and try to look for something new, I guess.
This is another one of those cases, like kind of like Black Flag or something, that this band is like so small that they surely could have found some way around this, like reforming under a different name or like something that they could have continued on making music together. I don't know. Like, they said their label contract was only 3 pages long. Like there surely weren't that many fucking clauses that could have stopped them from continuing.
Yeah,
some other way in some other iteration.
They said, I think it really maybe you're just like kind of exhausted by the whole thing at that point. Like it seems like, you know, even with the 3 contract thing, I think Biz mentioned that like they could have maybe took some more legal routes to kind of counteract that, but without mentioning any names in that article, they say that like some people were into it, some people weren't.
Some people weren't. Yeah.
So they do. Okay, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just gonna say, at a certain point too, as you alluded to, like how many more kicks can you take? You know, how many more, you know, challenges can you take? It was a challenge. Like the label's telling you can't put certain songs on the record. You got to change the titles. The lyrics are this, the lyrics are that. You got no tour support. You can't go out and do an actual full-fledged tour. The label's putting more promotion behind other acts and other artists. You're not getting the attention you want. You know, when it comes to like contract disputes and everything, especially during this era, I mean, having to comb through all that, get a lawyer, all that shit just seems like it was too much. And I'm sure the guys some of the guys in the band were like, this just fucking isn't worth it. It's taking the fun away from it. It's not worth doing if it's not fun, that kind of thing. And a couple of the guys just still wanted to do it, and they ended up doing it.
Yeah, I mean, some people like they definitely gave it like a go. I mean, for at least the next like 2 years, it seems like they put out. It's called Industry/Ripping Corpse in '92, and it was like a promo, maybe like 2 or 3 songs. There was one written by Erik Rutan, and the rest by I think Shaune. But they would sell this at some of their shows, and with the the hope of maybe getting some more label interest after Maze had at Kraze had basically filed for bankruptcy. Then in early '93, Gunter Ford, who I mentioned was also the manager for Morbid Angel, mentioned that they needed a guitarist to do the first US and European tours for Covenant, which was about to be released. So Ripping Corpse wasn't doing too many shows at the time, so Erik basically took the opportunity to tour with Morbid Angel at that point. They flew him down to Florida for a week. He learned 7 songs and practiced with the band, and they basically did those tours. And then he went back to Ripping Corpse back in New Jersey, and he was working in a studio after he had I think he graduated from maybe like a audio, maybe like art college in the area. I could be wrong, but when he got back from the tour, it wasn't really long after that the band had essentially broken up. He also mentions that Richard Burnell was doing, I think he started out maybe doing the Black Sabbath Motorhead Morbid Angel tour, which I believe we had mentioned perhaps in our Covenant episode a while back, but that didn't work out. So in February of 1994, our friend David from Morbid Angel gives Erik Rutan a call to basically fill in for that tour, and he just took the opportunity I'm going to move down here and I'm going to basically do whatever I can to secure my position in this band. I want to be a full-time member, and it worked out for him. So that was kind of one person's history going off from Ripping Corpse, and we've said it a million times. He has had a tremendous and lauded career with his different projects, whether those Morbid Angel records or Hate Eternal, the bands he's recorded, and obviously now being a full-fledged member of Cannibal Corpse at this point. So
you would never have Mana recording in Tampa, Florida without this album.
What really kind of bums me out about hearing this record is there's such a cool amount of shit going on. I'm like, man, what would the next record have sounded like if they had maybe honed in some of their songwriting a little bit and just gotten progressed as a band, as all bands often do. And so there is an unreleased album for the most part that you can listen to on YouTube. So essentially, after Erik left, they had a new bass player, Scott Hornick, who replaced Biz. They went into a studio and they kind of put down all of the instrumental tracks for their second album. And it's unmixed. There's no vocals on it, obviously, but it's listed as Growing Ancient with the Cold, and maybe even somebody made artwork for it. It's really neat looking, but it's amazing. I really love listening to it. When I stumbled upon it, I'm like, I can't believe this is out here, and it makes me mad that this never really came to fruition, because it would have been, I don't know. It just, I'm upset even thinking about it right now. If you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend checking it out. But the band breaks up. They essentially go on to their different paths. And Dylan, I know, is a big fan of Dim Mak, right? Or Dim Mak? How do you?
However it's pronounced. Yeah, Dim Mak. It's got. It almost feels like a continuation of the Ripping Corpse era stuff. It's got more of the atonal kind of craziness that the band was known for. Most of the band went on to play in Dim Mak at different points in time. And as far as I know, that band is still around. I don't think they've released an album in 14 years or so, but their 2006 album Knives of Ice was one that I became aware of, and kind of in the continuation of the Ripping Corpse stuff. I think Trevor Stannard did a review of the album or a Decibel article on the album, and I remember wanting to check it out based off that. Really cool band if you haven't taken a listen to it.
So in the current state of things, Kraze, Maze Records, they not only own the rights to Dreaming with the Dead, but they have essentially succeeded in blocking every attempt to have any sort of reissue or or any of the band even profiting from their own music. Apparently they tried to put it out again through Relapse. I think Relapse Records was going to do like this really great reissue, and they put together the packaging for it. But they were afraid that they might be sued by Kraze. And it seems like every so often the guy comes out and like maybe is selling the records again, perhaps. But he's in Canada, and I feel like they have tried to, send, cease and desist letters to this guy, and he just continues to kind of profit off of the band's one and only record.
It's funny, the fact of like they can't find him. Like there are certain parts of Canada that are just uninhabited, and they can't find this person. And it's like it's like Poxitani Phil. He just comes out once a year, releases this record to fuck these guys over, and then disappears, never to be heard from again.
We all know a record store that frequently will get like not authorized copies of records, especially rap records. They're kind of bootlegged. So I'm surprised there aren't more bootlegged copies of this record somewhere that people could buy. But I think if you like this band, probably don't buy the record, because they ain't going to make no fucking money off of it.
There's literally a quote from Biz from the Decibel article that says, "This guy is still selling the record from a duplicating company up in Canada. I looked him up. He even tried to send me a royalty check for $30. A lawyer said not to cash it, because once you do, it's saying you're agreeing to his owning the right, because there is no contract per se." So it's like, I've never seen any money off of this, and I will like, as far as everyone's concerned, it seems like some people are interested in going after this guy. Some people are just kind of like leaving it alone. But I mean, even to the point where there were talks about a reunion, and they just, most members are on board except one person in particular.
I don't know, and obviously I don't know any of the money situation of this label, but if I were the people in Ripping Corpse, I probably wouldn't be blaming Biohazard. I would probably be blaming Mick Taylor. Like, who fucking knows how much money they had to sink into that record?
I don't know if they were blaming, and I could be wrong, maybe I looked at the quotes, but it seemed more like they were like upset that the label wasn't just like sharing the wealth. I doubt that they were like mad at Biohazard, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't interpret it that way either. I just figured it was just like, they're putting more money into Biohazard, in which Biohazard went on, probably left this label for a lot of the same reasons, and went on to Roadrunner Records at that point. Yeah. And it just seems like this label, we'll even call it that, this just seems like a big Ponzi scheme. It seems like whatever way this guy could have made money, he saw Mick Taylor's name, was like, oh, Rolling Stones. Okay. Big hit, tax write-off. Boom. I'm going to go disappear into a cave in Canada.
So that's it, essentially. Very brief history, but an important history for a lot of different individuals involved, obviously. I do love this record. Like I said, I don't think it's a perfect record. There are things that, I think there are things that would have been maybe improved upon had the band continued to evolve. And, again, I really love listening to those instrumental tracks. It's like what could have been, but it's the same thing with Human Remains as well. Like, kind of a short history of both of these bands coming from the same scene. I love that it exists. I love what it did for other people, and the influence it's had on other, bands in the extreme music community, for sure. All right, we've reached that point of the episode where we like to recommend things we've been listening to. Fuck. God damn it, Dylan. Here's our recommendations.
Now my knees hurt.
Obviously, if you like this record, I mentioned earlier that I got into it through Human Remains, so I thought this would be a good opportunity. If you haven't checked out Using Sickness as a Hero, check out that EP. Dave Whitty from Municipal Waste and a million other fucking bands under the sun has often quoted this band as like a huge influence to his playing and the things that he has done after Human Remains. So check out that EP. It's one of my favorite things ever. So and then Stomach, the two-piece from the Chicagoland suburbs has returned with a new single and an upcoming sophomore album. The single is Get Through Winter, just completely about seasonal depression and the fucking miserable ass cold season that we experience in this area. The album is called Low Demon. It will be out July 18th through Hibernation Release. John Hoffman, Weekend Nachos, formerly of Spine and Ledge. You also have Adam Tomlinson, who was featured in like the first lineup of Weekend Nachos, but you might know him from bands like Sea of Shit and Sick Tired. This is the first single. It's going to have 5 total tracks. It is complete and utter grief worship. It's heavy, it's fucking noisy, and just disgusting, and I fucking love it. So check it out.
My first rec, I think also from the Chicago area. Human Zoo by Stress Positions came out May 16th from 31G Records, friends of the show. Fucking crazy ass punk rock hardcore. I think there are like, it's 10 songs in total. There are like 6 songs that are super punk. There's one song that is kind of like maybe more spoken word or spoken samples with some like ambient background maybe. But then there are like 3 remixes to songs on the record. Very political. It's about kind of Israel-Palestine conflict, Palestinian people being wiped off the planet, genocide. So yeah, it's pretty heavy. Listen to that. It's good shit. My other recommendation came out the same day. It's Gold Dust in the Shade of Living Light. Features Stephen Pierce from Ampere. It's a full band release. The 2 previous records were kind of like more acoustic, smaller. It's kind of folky, kind of psychedelic stuff. I like it a lot. It's a good release.
So the first of my 2 recommendations for this week is Hate Eternal's 2008 album Fury and Flames, which has Shaune Kelley joining back up with Erik Rutan. This is the band's Metal Blade Records debut. They had previously been on Earache Records. This has the track Bringer of Storms on it, which, if you're familiar, has a very crazy video for it. It also has Alex Webster playing bass on the album, which Alex played on the Hate Eternal demo. But just really great Hate Eternal record. I've never heard a bad Hate Eternal record. The band is wildly chaotic and carries a lot of the traits from the Ripping Corpse era into that band. My second rec is the newest release from Pelican, Flickering Resonance. Flickering Resonance. It came out on May 16th through Run for Cover Records. I believe, I'm probably wrong on this, but I believe they're a Chicago band as well.
They are.
So
lots of Chicago groups in this this reg.
Yeah. Great album. I've been looking forward to it for many years. I know our mutual friend John Wooten was able to take some footage of the band at one of their hometown shows recently. And I believe Austin was able to check that out. But the album's great. It's got everything you would imagine from a Pelican release on it. There's even some new stuff in there. There's a lot of like, I got Smashing Pumpkins vibes, like Siamese Dream kind of sounding things on it. But it's a great listen. They're the one instrumental band that seems like you could put a vocalist in it and it would fit right in because they pay attention to like melody. They pay attention to all of those things. And it all fits. It fits in the scope. It's a great release. The album cover is fantastic. I really enjoyed it, and check it out.
Yeah, it's a great record. Yeah, John and I had seen that they were performing at this little venue next to the Metro. It's called G-Man's Tavern, and they were apparently, I didn't know this prior to the show, but they like to play the songs live before they go into the studio. So we got a chance to see that. This was like last August. And so now and we'd even seen them, with Russian Circles at the Metro, and they played these same songs. So to see them in their like final recorded version has been really fucking cool. And like all of the visual stuff with the music videos has been great. I believe there's a really great article recently through Brooklyn Vegan that talks about all of the influences that ranges from like Fugazi to just about anything. So yeah, great record. Definitely check that out for sure. But that's the end of the episode. Ripping Corpse, Dreaming with the Dead. And man, was it ever. We did that. We can be followed. Follow us. Follow us at Riff Worship Pod, Instagram and Twitter. You can find our officially curated playlist below. Hits from the Crypt, as well as riffs on repeat, Spotify, and Apple Music. Dylan also does reviews on our YouTube channel. You can check those out there. Until then, I think our next episode, we're going to have an interview. We're going to have a few interviews coming up. So definitely stay tuned for some of those episodes, one of which Dylan actually did do a review of. So stay tuned. It's going to be exciting. But for myself, for Swindle, for Dylan, you've been listening to Riff Worship. We'll see you next time with something else. Bye.
Darn kids.